Hello and welcome back to EnglishProTips.com. In today's lesson, we're going to be focusing on the most common mistakes that students make in the IELTS writing test, particularly in Task 2. So we're going to be looking at subject-verb agreements, we're going to be looking at gerunds, prepositions, modal verbs, but we're going to start off with articles. Okay, so articles in English are a and an, the, and then also this one, which is the zero article, which is when we don't put an article there. Okay, have a look at this sentence and tell me which article would you put in this space? And remember, the zero article is an option, so not putting an article at all. Something exams put a lot of pressure on something students. Would you say an exams put a lot of pressure on an students? The exams put a lot of pressure on the students? Or exams put a lot of pressure on students? The answer is exams put a lot of pressure on students. So we put the zero article here, and we're going to be looking at the rules as to why in a second. But first let's look at some more examples. Number 2, something exams that students do in something final year of high school can shape their whole life. What would you put here? Which article? The answer is the exams that students do in the final year of high school can shape their whole life. And again, don't worry, we're going to be looking at the rules in just a second. Number 3, something rich are getting richer every year. What would you put? The answer is the rich are getting richer every year. Number 4, something large number of students study abroad every year. A large number of students study abroad every year. Number 5, regular exams are something important feature of secondary school education. So which article would you put here? You would put an. So an important feature of secondary school education. Right, let's look at some of the rules for articles in English. And there are a lot of rules for articles, but we're just going to focus on some of the most useful, or at least the rules that will help you avoid these common mistakes. The first one is we don't use an article when you describe things in general. And you can see that in sentence number 1. We're saying exams put a lot of pressure on students. So we're saying exams in general, all over the world, put a lot of pressure on students in general, all over the world. If we put the exams put a lot of pressure on the students, then we're talking about specific exams. And you can see that in sentence number 2. So when we're talking about something specific, like the exams that students do in the final year of school can shape their whole life, that's when we use the. So remember, when we're describing something in general, we don't use an article, and when we're describing something specific, we use the definite article, so the. Number 3, or rather rule number 3, use the with adjectives to describe groups. And you can see that in sentence number 3. We're saying the rich are getting richer every year. So rich is an adjective, but by putting the before, we're talking about people who are rich, the rich. And we can use this with any adjective. Number 4, use a with words that start with a consonant sound. Okay, so of the letters in English, some of them are consonants and some of them are vowels. So vowels are A, E, I, O, U, and the rest of the letters are consonants. So if you look at sentence number 4, it says a large. Now that's because l is a consonant sound. So when we have a consonant sound, we use a. And as we can see in sentence number 5, when we have a sound with a vowel like important, I is a I sound, then we use an before. Now remember, it's not necessarily the letter that the word starts with, but the sound it makes. So for example, even though university starts with a U, which is a vowel, we still say a university, not an university. Similarly, we say an hour. So even though hour, so 60 minutes, an hour, is technically starting with an H, because it's still a vowel sound, a hour, it almost sounds like an O or a U, hour, then we put an before it, an hour. Okay, that's important to know, especially for writing. Okay, so now that we've looked at articles, it's time to move on to countable and uncountable nouns, which cause a lot of problems for students. Have a look at this sentence and tell me, where is the mistake? Okay, the mistake is in the final word. We don't say luggages, we say luggage. And that's because luggage is an uncountable noun. What about this, number 2? See if you can spot the mistake here. I'll give you a clue. It's also to do with countable and uncountable nouns. Which of these words doesn't look quite right to you? The word is accommodation. So we don't say accommodations, we say accommodation. It's uncountable. Number 3, teachers give young people very good advices. So this is a very common mistake that students make in the writing test and the speaking test. And it's important that you don't make this mistake when you go to do your IELTS test. We don't say advices, we say advice, uncountable. Number 4, it's not uncommon to get stuck in traffic for hours during rush hour. There's a mistake here. It's in traffics. Again, uncountable, traffic. Number 5, nowadays people prefer to live in apartment buildings with modern furnitures. No, modern furniture. Number 6, less people are able to live in the city centre. Now this is a very common mistake and one that I find myself making quite regularly, although I do try and correct myself. We don't say less people, we say fewer people. Right, okay. Let's look at some of the rules and some common countable and uncountable nouns. So here are some very common uncountable nouns. And these are the nouns that students often think are countable, so they add an S, but they shouldn't. So things like accommodation, action, advice, behavior, burden, chaos, damage, furniture, information, luck, luggage, news, permission, progress, scenery, traffic, weather, work. These are uncountable nouns. And then if we look at sentence number 6, we need to remember that we use fewer with countable nouns or plural nouns, and we use less with uncountable nouns. So we would say things like less water, less milk, fewer people, fewer children. Okay. Number 3 is with prepositions. Okay. I still haven't met anyone that enjoys learning prepositions in English because there are just so many rules. But what we're going to do now is look at some of the common mistakes with prepositions in IELTS writing. Okay, which preposition would you put here? The way we are raised has a significant impact. The kind of people that we become. Okay, the preposition is on. So a significant impact on. Number 2, young children depend their parents. The answer is on. Number 3, young children are not capable making rational decisions. Capable of making rational decisions. Number 4, many young people choose to study abroad, experience a new culture. The preposition is to. Right, now from the first 3 sentences we're looking at what's called dependent prepositions. So when we see these nouns, verbs or adjectives, we always have the same preposition afterwards, which means we can learn that preposition. So, for example, some common noun plus prepositions, and dependent prepositions that is, are things like impact on, demand for, need for, reason for, solution to, way to, lack of, increase in. So when we see these nouns like impact, demand, need, then we always use the same preposition. Similarly with verbs, and we can see that in sentence number 2, we have depend on. So depend on, rely on, spend on, invest in, result in, success in, search for, ask for, and apologize for. Adjectives plus prepositions, and we can see that in sentence number 3. So are not capable of. We can also say responsible for, aware of, satisfied with, familiar with, interested in, and well known for. Okay, now sentence number 4 is slightly different. It's not a dependent preposition, but it's a mistake that I see very regularly in the practice essays that students hand me. When we give a purpose, we have to plus the infinitive. So here we're giving the purpose of why students choose to study abroad. Many young people choose to study abroad to experience a new culture. Now, very often students will put for experience a new culture. We don't use that. When we have a reason, we have to plus the infinitive. So I went down to the shops to buy milk. I travelled to Scotland to see my family, for example. Okay, now that we've covered prepositions, it's time to look at the infinitive and ing verbs. So ing verbs are often referred to as gerunds. Okay, now look at this sentence and tell me which is the correct option. So is it study abroad is very popular these days, or studying abroad is very popular these days? The answer is studying abroad is very popular these days. So this here, this ing verb, studying, is called a gerund. Have a look at the next one. Many young people these days choose to study abroad or choose studying abroad. In this case, it's choose to study abroad. Number 3, multinational corporations often hide their money to avoid pay taxes or paying taxes. The answer is paying taxes. Don't worry, we're going to be looking at the rules in a second. Number 4, remember to turn the lights off or remember turning the lights off. In this case, it's remember to turn the lights off. And number 5, I remember to turn the lights off before I left the house, or I remember turning the lights off before I left the house. So here it's turning the lights off. Right, let's look at the rules. So we use an ing verb when it is the subject of the sentence. And we can see that in sentence number 1. We're saying studying abroad is very popular these days. So we have studying abroad is the subject of the sentence. It's a bit like saying smoking is bad for your health. Swimming is a wonderful sport. So when we have a verb at the beginning of a sentence or as the subject of the sentence, we put it in an ing form because it's acting as a noun. I hope that makes sense. The next one. Now, this is just a case of memory. Some verbs are followed by an infinitive. So words like, or verbs like agree, arrange, attempt, choose, decide, fail, hope, learn, manage, offer, plan. So we always have agree to meet at 6, arrange to go to the cinema, choose to buy popcorn. So these verbs are followed by an infinitive. And some verbs are followed by an ing verb. So avoid, be used to, delay, dislike, enjoy, escape, finish, forgive, give up, imagine. So we can say things like avoid paying taxes, be used to living abroad, enjoy playing chess. So certain verbs are followed by ing forms of the verb. Then we have some verbs that can be followed by an ing verb or an infinitive, but these change the meaning slightly, and we can see that in sentence number 4 and 5. We have remember to turn the lights off and remember turning the lights off. So if you say remember to turn the lights off, then you're telling someone something that they should do. However, if you say I remember turning the lights off, then you're saying something that you remember in the past. Okay, now we're going to look at subject-verb agreement. So this is something that students tend to find quite difficult, but unfortunately, if you make mistakes with your subject-verb agreement, you tend to get a considerably lower score in your IELTS writing. So it's an important thing to pay attention to and to try and improve on. Okay, have a look at this sentence and tell me which is the correct option. A large number of people think or thinks that exams cause too much stress for teenagers. So the subject of the sentence is a large number of people. So this is a plural noun. So we should say a large number of people think that exams cause too much stress. Number 2, it's clear that nobody knows the truth. So nobody is a singular noun. So we're going to say nobody knows the truth. Number 3, both private and public companies need or needs to work together. The answer is need. So when we have both, we're going to have a plural noun. So both public and private companies need to work together. Number 4, smoking damage or damages our lungs. The answer is damages. So when we have a gerund, it's going to be a singular noun. Right, let's write all this down. So some popular single and some popular plural nouns that cause a lot of confusion for students. So when we have the number of, that's a singular noun. So we'd say the number of people living abroad is increasing. Everyone, everybody, anybody, anyone, and nobody. So everyone loves listening to music. So it's not everyone love, it's everyone loves. Or nobody loves eating English food, for example. Sentences that start with a gerund. So we can see that in sentence number 4. Smoking damages our lungs. So we don't say smoking damage, it's smoking damages. So when we have a gerund, we always have a singular noun. Plural, a number of. So this is confusing because if we have the number of, it's singular, but if we have a number of, it's plural. Very tricky. None, both, all, a couple. This is also plural. And finally, family, police, children, a few, or many. Also plural. Right, number 6, the final grammar that we're going to be looking at is modal verbs. So modal verbs are words like can, could, may, might, will, would, shall, should, and must. These are called the pure modal verbs in English. Now there's 2 mistakes that I see quite regularly, and this is the first. Parents must pay high student fees to send their children to study abroad. Where's the mistake? We don't say must to pay, we just say must pay. Right, so when we have a modal verb, we never have to afterwards. So we always have the modal verb and then the infinitive without to. So must pay high student fees. Number 2, intelligent students can get scholarships to study abroad. What do we think of that? No. We say may be able to. And the reason for that is we don't put 2 modal verbs together. Okay, let's look at the rules. Number 1, don't put to after a modal verb, and we can see that in sentence number 1. Number 2, don't put 2 modal verbs together, and we can see that in sentence number 2. So we don't say things like will, can. Instead, we just say will be able to instead of can. Right, it's now time to do a little quiz. So what I'm going to do is put down 8 sentences, and I want you to look at these 8 sentences and find the mistake in each one. Now what you can do is pause the video and work through it in your own time, and then press play, and then we're going to go through it together. Have you paused the video? If not, let's go through it together now anyway. So, number 1, there's something strange about this sentence. We don't say the pollutions in big cities is very bad. We say the pollution in big cities is very bad, or even pollution in big cities is very bad. So pollution is an uncountable noun. We don't say pollutions. Number 2, students must do their homework before every class. Okay. Remember the rules for modal verbs. We don't say must to do, we just say must do. So we don't have to after a pure modal verb. Number 3, the society is becoming more materialistic. We don't want to put the before society because we're talking about society in general. So we would just say society is becoming more materialistic. Number 4, nowadays, live abroad is becoming increasingly appealing to many young people. Okay, what do we think about the second word, live? We don't like it. Let's change it to living, because this is the subject of the sentence. Living abroad is becoming increasingly appealing. So when we have a verb acting as the subject of a sentence, we use an ing form, the gerund. Okay, number 5. We need to take actions to stop large companies from avoiding paying taxes. What do we think about actions? We don't like it. It should be action. This is an uncountable noun. We need to take action. Number 6. Young people often enjoy to play video games in their free time. Where's the mistake? The mistake is with enjoy to play. We say enjoy playing. So whenever we have the verb enjoy, the next verb has to be in an ing form. So enjoy eating, enjoy playing, enjoy sleeping. Number 7. Using fewer energy will save money and produce fewer carbon emissions. So 2 mistakes here. The first one is fewer, we should say less. So using less energy. And that's because energy is uncountable. And it's not fewer carbon emissions, because again, uncountable. It's going to be less carbon emissions. Finally, number 8. The number of people driving private cars have increased in the last few decades. Okay, a tricky one here, but remember back to what I said about subject-verb agreement and when we have the number of. So it needs to be the number of people driving private cars has increased in the last few decades. Right, lots of information in today's lesson, and feel free to go through it again and again because these are some very common mistakes, and by avoiding them you're going to be able to get a higher score for grammatical range and accuracy in your IELTS writing test. Okay, best of luck with all of your studies, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Bye then.